Have you noticed? The ones who see the truth, the ones who awaken to a deeper reality, no longer fit into the noise of this world. They are vanishing, not because they are weak, but because they have found something greater than the illusions around them. We live in a world overflowing with noise, screens flashing, voices shouting, distractions pulling us in 1,000 directions. Everyone seems busy chasing something, yet very few pause to ask why. But among this chaos, there exists a group of people who have awakened to a deeper truth. They see beyond the surface, beyond the shallow pursuits of power, wealth, and recognition. These are the spiritually awake, and if you've looked closely, you may have noticed they are quietly disappearing from society. Not vanishing into thin air, but withdrawing from the constant noise, stepping back from the endless race, and choosing a path few understand. Why does this happen? Because when you wake up spiritually, the old world no longer satisfies you. The conversations that once entertained now feel hollow. The pursuits that once drove you now feel meaningless. The spiritually awake discover that real life is not in chasing approval or competing for status, but in aligning with inner truth. And so they begin to disappear, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. They realize that blending into the noise means losing themselves, and they refuse to trade awareness for conformity. Society thrives on distraction. It feeds on comparison, envy, and fear. From the moment you open your eyes each morning, the world tries to tell you who you should be, what you should desire, and how you should measure success. But spiritually awake people see through this illusion. They understand that these are chains disguised as progress. They no longer crave the validation of the crowd. They no longer run after applause. Instead, they quietly detach, finding fulfillment in solitude, stillness, and connection to something higher. That is why their disappearance often feels mysterious to others who cannot grasp their inner transformation. This disappearance is not a retreat. It is a rising, spiritually awake. People are not running from society. They are moving into deeper alignment with truth. They realize that true strength is not found in shouting louder, but in choosing silence when the world screams. They disappear not because they are lost, but because they are found. They are not escaping life. They are entering it more fully than ever before, and from this higher ground, they no longer need the approval of a society that has forgotten its soul. You see, the world celebrates speed, ambition, and endless accumulation. But the spiritually awake learn that more is not always better. They learn that stillness has greater power than noise, that depth matters more than surface, and that peace is worth more than applause. The world cannot understand this, because society trains people to measure life by external success. Yet those who awaken realize that inner wealth is eternal, while outer wealth fades. They disappear from the rat race, because they know the race itself is an illusion. The spiritually awake also disappear because they outgrow superficial connection. Conversations that revolve around gossip, materialism, or ego no longer resonate with them. They crave authenticity, honesty, and depth. But in a world addicted to masks and performances, authenticity feels rare. So they choose to walk away, not in arrogance, but in integrity. They would rather sit in silence with truth than surround themselves with noise that drains the soul. Their disappearance is a form of protection. They guard their energy because they understand how valuable it is. Another reason spiritually awake people seem to vanish is because they are no longer afraid of solitude. Society fears being alone because it forces people to face themselves. That is why distractions are everywhere, to keep people running from their own reflection. But the awakened see solitude not as loneliness, but as communion. In solitude, they connect with their higher self, with divine presence, with the infinite wisdom within. They disappear into quiet places, because in quiet places, they are closest to truth. And while others fear silence, they embrace it as their sanctuary. They also disappear because they refuse to be controlled by fear. Fear is the currency of society. It drives people to consume more, compete more, and doubt more. But once you awaken, fear loses its grip. You begin to see that fear is just a shadow, not reality. You realize that abundance, not scarcity, is the true nature of life. You stop worrying about lack and start trusting in divine supply. And when fear no longer controls you, the systems built on fear lose their power. The world cannot manipulate you anymore, and so you quietly step away from its grip. The spiritually awake also withdraw, because they see the cost of constant distraction. They see how society keeps people busy but empty, connected but isolated, informed but not wise. They choose instead to cultivate awareness. They practice mindfulness, meditation, prayer, and reflection. These practices cannot be rushed. They require space and silence, and so they disappear from the noise, not because they reject life, but because they choose a higher quality of life. They are not interested in being everywhere. They are interested in being fully present where they are. This disappearance is also about transformation. When you awaken, your values shift. What once seemed important, status, competition, appearances, loses its hold. What once seemed small, gratitude, presence, love, becomes everything. This transformation sets you apart from society's rhythm. While others are running, you are standing still. While others are shouting, you are listening. While others are chasing, you are receiving. This reversal of values makes you invisible to a world still trapped in illusions, and that invisibility is freedom. But do not mistake their disappearance for passivity. Spiritually awake people are not hiding. They are rebuilding. They are planting seeds of love, truth, and awareness, quietly, away from the spotlight. They are shaping a new world in silence, a world not built on fear and division, but on connection and purpose. Their disappearance from society's stage is not abandonment, it is preparation. They are preparing themselves and the world for a higher way of living. They may not be loud, but their impact is undeniable. So, if you have noticed this disappearance, understand that it is not a tragedy. It is a sign of transformation. Spiritually awake people are stepping into a dimension society does not yet see. They are choosing depth over distraction, presence over performance, truth over illusion. They disappear from society because they refuse to be part of its unconsciousness. And in their quiet withdrawal, they find the strength to shine brighter than ever. Perhaps you too feel this pull to step back, to disconnect from the noise, to seek something deeper. Do not resist it. This is your awakening, calling you forward. The world will not always understand, but your soul will. The path of the awakened is not about vanishing forever, but about returning stronger, clearer, and freer. It is about becoming so deeply rooted in truth that when you do engage with society, you bring light instead of absorbing its darkness. Yes, the spiritually awake are disappearing, but they are not disappearing into emptiness. They are disappearing into wholeness. They are stepping away from a society built on illusions and stepping into a reality built on truth. They are not lost. They are found. They are not weak. They are powerful. And their disappearance is not the end. It is the beginning of a new way of being. The question is not why they are disappearing. The question is, will you join them? Will you have the courage to step away from the noise, to seek silence, to embrace solitude, to live in truth? Because once you do, you will discover what they already know, that real life does not happen in society's spotlight, but in the quiet places where your soul awakens to eternity. Spiritually awake people are slowly disappearing from society, because the noise and chaos no longer bring them any satisfaction. Once their eyes open to deeper truth, the endless chatter of the world feels empty. They no longer find joy in chasing approval or competing for attention. The games of comparison lose their meaning, and the rush for recognition feels hollow. Instead of craving the spotlight, they turn to silence. The distractions that once entertained now drain their spirit. They begin to seek something greater than the applause of the crowd. Their energy shifts away from noise and towards stillness. This shift is not understood by many, and so it appears as if they are disappearing. Yet in reality, they are simply moving to a higher dimension of awareness. Their vanishing is not weakness, it is awakening. When people awaken spiritually, shallow pursuits no longer have power over them. The desire for status, money, or the approval of others begins to fade. They no longer measure themselves by society's standards. Instead, they turn inward and align with truth. They see through the illusion that more possessions or higher titles will bring peace. The world may call them strange for stepping away, but they are choosing freedom. They no longer chase things that leave the soul empty. They would rather live with less, but in alignment with purpose. They find value in simplicity where society craves excess. Their quiet detachment is not rejection of life. It is discovery of real life. They walk away from validation because truth has become their foundation. Their disappearance is not retreat. It is transformation into deeper awareness. From the outside, it may look like they are pulling back, but within they are expanding into clarity and peace. They are no longer prisoners of endless striving. Instead, they embrace a new way of being. They choose to live from the inside out, not the outside in. Society cannot understand this shift because it worships activity and noise. But for the awakened, silence becomes more powerful than action. Their transformation is hidden from most, but it is very real. They disappear not because they are tired, but because they are alive in a new way. They are not running away. They are stepping into a higher truth. Their disappearance is proof of their growth, not their loss. As people awaken spiritually, they outgrow shallow connections that once felt normal. Conversations about gossip, possessions, and ego no longer interest them. They crave honesty and depth that most avoid. They realize that their spirit withers when surrounded by superficiality. So they walk away from circles that drain their energy. This is not arrogance. It is alignment with truth. They are no longer willing to wear masks just to fit in. Authenticity becomes more valuable than acceptance. They prefer one honest conversation over 1,000 shallow ones. Their disappearance from old groups confuses others, but it frees their soul. They know that not everyone will understand their path, and that is fine. Their quiet withdrawal protects the purity of their spirit. Spiritually awake, people are no longer afraid of solitude, which is why they seem to vanish. Society fears being alone, but they embrace it as a gift. In solitude, they find peace that crowds cannot give. Alone, they hear the voice of truth more clearly. They are not lonely, for they are deeply connected to higher presence. Solitude becomes a sanctuary where wisdom flows freely. They disappear from noise because they have found richness in silence. The world thinks silence is empty, but they discover it is full. Their joy does not depend on constant company. They are never truly alone, for their spirit is alive with deeper connection. Solitude gives them strength that the crowd could never provide. Their absence from society is their union with something eternal. Fear is the tool society uses to control, but spiritually awake people no longer bow to it. They see fear for what it is, an illusion, a shadow with no power. Once fear loses its grip, manipulation no longer works on them. They no longer run after security built on anxiety. Instead, they trust the abundance of life and divine supply. Scarcity no longer rules their decisions. They step away from systems designed to keep people afraid. Their freedom from fear makes them appear distant, but in reality they are rising. They are no longer slaves to what others think might be lost. Fear cannot dictate their steps because they walk in trust. Their disappearance is proof of courage, not weakness. They have chosen freedom over fear, and that makes them untouchable. The spiritually awake withdraw because they see the price of constant distraction. Society is busy but empty, connected but isolated, informed but not wise. Endless noise keeps people from meeting themselves. But those who awaken break this cycle. They choose presence over busyness and awareness over speed. They value depth instead of scattering energy everywhere. Disappearing from distractions is not escape, but focus. They understand that peace is found in simplicity. Their lives may look less crowded, but they are more alive. They are no longer addicted to being everywhere and doing everything. Their awareness is their shield against chaos. They vanish from distractions to discover the fullness of presence, and in that presence they find life as it was meant to be lived. Their disappearance is not weakness. It is preparation for something greater. While the world believes they are abandoning their place, they are actually building. They plant seeds of truth, quietly away from noise. Their silence becomes fertile ground for transformation. They are not hiding. They are preparing to shine in new ways. Their strength grows in stillness, even if unseen. Society may think they are lost, but they are being renewed. They disappear from the surface, so they can rise with more depth. Their retreat is a form of training, a season of preparation. They are gathering wisdom that noise cannot teach. When they return, they bring light into the darkness. Their absence is not the end. It is the beginning of a higher purpose.